This is now our third episode of the Changing Perception of Sales webinar. It's great to have you all with us. My name is Neil Clough. I am the MD and co-founder of This is Prime. If you don't know Prime, then we are a graduate sales recruitment and sales training company. And we're also the proud winners of the ISM's BESMA Sales Training Provider of the Year Award. So you're in good hands. It's our third episode of the series. The feedback has been really positive so far. Our vision at Prime is to change perception of sales. We are really keen to get more people into the industry and make it a career that we can be proud of. So this is why we're doing this webinar series. And we believe that by bringing successful people together, we can add further value and insight into salespeople across the UK. So I hope you enjoy it. This title of the episode is Will Sales Ever Be the Same Again? A question I've been asked quite a lot recently, and I'm sure Kate and Josh will have done so the same. Now, we can't control what is going on in the world, nor can we predict the future, but we can be better prepared for any obstacles that are going to be coming our way. I believe that the salespeople out there that are well prepared, that are well planned, and have the right mindset will be the salespeople that come out of this on top. So it'd be really interesting to get the insight of Josh and Kate in terms of what those guys have been doing in their businesses to ensure we can continue to sell, and the ideas of what we can be doing to sell and hit the ground running when we get back to normal. So thank you for everybody that is joining us. It's great to have so many with you, with us again. I'm going to, before we introduce our speakers, or let Kate and Josh introduce themselves, I just wanted to say we want to make this interactive again. So you will see there is a live Q&A. If you've got a question you would like to ask, please put your question into the Q&A, click send, and I will do my best to keep a track of that and ask Kate and Josh throughout the session, or we'll keep a little bit of time at the end. We're going to keep this to around 45 minutes, so we're going to make it impactful, so stick with us all the way through to the end. So any questions, please click away. In terms of introductions, it's now time for Kate and Josh to introduce yourselves and put you on the spot a little bit. I'm going to come to yourself first of all, Kate, if you could give us an introduction, but also what got you into sales, and give us a little bit of insight into your company.
Yeah, thanks, Neil. Right, start with what got me into sales. So I did like an engineering, manufacturing, production degree, and was applying to be in logistics. So my career was straight down in that logistics lane. And then Fujitsu, which was ICL at the time, wrote back to me on their grad program and went, "You don't want to do logistics, you want to go into sales." And there beginneth my career in sales. So straight after uni, went into a grad program, and then here I am, 20 years later, doing sales still, and I'm loving every minute.
Yes, you mentioned though, to be fair.
In what appears to be just about.
Or you just got a very big kitchen area, but
yeah, we sleep in the kitchen. It's basically a flat. And so where have I? So lots of organisations through my career, into leadership roles over the last sort of 20 years, really. And then found myself frustrated with how little coaching was deployed and employed by sales leaders and organisations, and so decided to tackle that challenge and launch D4Enable, which is a technology platform to enable organisations and sales teams to define what good looks like for them, then develop people, coach people around what good looks like, so to drive towards that goal, and then ultimately to measure the outcomes so that you can assess and adjust as you go. So that's where that's where we focus our time now.
Excellent. Well, it's brilliant to have you with us. Thank you for taking the time out of your day. Now we've got Mr. Josh Perry. Again, same question to you, Josh. What got you into sales? Give us a little bit of insight into your journey.
I think like a lot of people, I fell into it. I think there's there's no real push at university, or there's no celebration of the career sales can offer, to be honest. And I'd sort of done law at university, done my LPC as well, and sort of moved to London with aspirations to be a lawyer. What no one told me is that that's quite hard. I'm sure I was told, I probably wasn't listening, to be honest. So I think got in contact with an agency similar to Prime, and what I realized was that, it felt like, almost half the roles out there were sales roles. So I kind of thought, okay, well, let's give that a go. And sort of came across Leyton, which is where I work now, took a phone-based grad role there, and sort of worked my way up from there, really. And I've done almost every job under the sun at Leyton. I think it's almost like the sort of completed it, mate, kind of attitude related. I think I've done everything from sort of the sales dev role to a junior manager role, did an operations and an HR role for a while, did a BD role for a while, then moved into more management, and took over the sales development team as it was at the time. It was about 4 people, and sort of gradually grown that with sort of support of other directors to in the best part of 100 people across 4 sites now. So that's roughly my journey, bit of everything. And in terms of Leyton, what we do is, in a nutshell, it's basically getting cash for the UK's most innovative companies, which obviously at the moment is quite topical. So that's pretty much it.
Brilliant. It's great to have you with us, and also an adopted Mancunian. So how long have you been living in Manchester for now, John?
Coming up to about 18 months, 2 years now. But I've enjoyed it so far. I think I've done London, or sort of I've worked in London for about 8 years or so. And for those of you that worked in London, it does sort of take its toll on you after a while. It's quite intense. And I thought I sort of fancied a change, but still didn't want to go. I'm from a fairly small town, and I didn't quite want to go back that small. So nagged the CEO enough and did well enough that he allowed us to sort of head up an office up here, which was exciting.
Brilliant. Excellent. Well, thanks again for having you both with us. So in terms of the questions, we've got a couple that have already started to come in, so I'll keep a track on that. But the first question that we've got for you today is, fully aware that both of you and your businesses are still selling, which is absolutely awesome. So what challenges have you faced to selling right now? And I suppose, what have you been doing to try and help your teams, overcome them? So I'm going to come to yourself, Kate, first of all with that. What are the challenges out there to selling, and what have you been doing about it?
I think we've come on a little bit of a journey over the last probably 5 to 6 weeks. I think that the initial outcome was everybody stopped. It just stopped. Nobody answering calls, essentially nobody doing things. So we were pretty agile at the time, and we're able to focus on how we can help people. And help organizations, because selling to sales teams, we've got access to sort of lots of resources that we can use to help. So we pivoted and focused on how we can help. I have found the challenges are around probably more delays in decision making than actual activity now. So as we've come through those initial couple of weeks, for us, lots of people interested, lots of people engaged with us, but perhaps that final decision being pushed until we've got a clearer idea in what the future is going to look like. Yeah. But I think over the last week, we've started people, and this is an overused phrase, but settling into just getting on with it. And that's that's something that we're focusing on. But our key focus and the tools that we've given to our team are go out and help, go out and build relationships, go out and give more than you're asking back. And that's been a key thing for us.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think at the moment, sales for me certainly has changed in the way we approach it. And I think the companies and salespeople that have come out on top are the salespeople that build the best relationships, that work now, but also will work ongoing and hit the ground running when we get back to it. So I couldn't agree more. Building relationships, absolutely key right now. Mm-hmm. Josh, what's been the challenges for you guys, and what have you been doing about it?
Yeah, I think there's been a number of them, and I think I agree with Kate. There has been a bit of a journey. I think to start with, it was the obvious technological ones. It was sort of adapting Leyton and our internal processes to be fit for purpose for the new business as usual that was coming. Once we got that set up, it was kind of a case of I think encouraging people to adopt the behaviours we were seeing were working at the time. So the obvious one was, we quite could say that not the death of the landline, but we certainly felt that way for a lot of people. So it was making sure that people have the tools, the software tools, and were encouraged to get mobile numbers. I think that was the obvious thing. Training people on the importance of social selling, LinkedIn. We've had to adapt the way that we coach and how and where we drive behaviour. I think also making sure your product offering fits. I think there's a sensitivity point and an empathy point focusing on that relationship building you talked about there, Neil, where you have to be sympathetic when you're engaging with your clients now, and sort of coaching how people can still fundamentally ask people to, you know, buy a product, buy a service, whilst being sympathetic and tying in your value proposition to solving the problems they've got or are facing in the very, very short term. Because otherwise, exactly what Kate was talking about, people like the idea, but it's going to get pushed and pushed and pushed until the sun is shining again, which if you do that, obviously, you know, you're not going to get any cash and you're going to struggle as a business.
Yeah. How have you found in terms of motivating your salespeople in terms of mindset? So I think the one thing that's come about of this right now is sales has always been tough. You know, there's not one salesperson I've met, and please tell me if I'm wrong, that has sold to more people than they haven't. And I think now that's just got that little bit harder for obvious reasons. I think mindset, and we've had a question that's come in that touches on mindset really.
Yeah.
Is now a good time for new people to be getting into sales? Because the normal, not as normal, and that question's just come in really around mindset, and it's from Paula, that she's been selling for 30 years, but she's got somebody new, brand new salesperson, and just come into selling in the crisis. It's a new opportunity, but is that going to affect them because the new normal's not normal? And how is that their mindset? I mean, what's your thoughts on that and keeping positive mindset in this tough circumstances?
Yeah, I think that, you know, for us as a management team, the personnel challenge and keeping people in a positive place was a huge challenge. I think you can do that with simple, clear messaging, focusing on the success people are having. If you do these behaviours, this is the success you will get, and making sure people know that recipe to be successful, nice and transparent. Interestingly, I think it could be potentially a very, very good time to get into sales, because some of our top performers at the moment aren't the people with the most experience. I think sometimes the old habits die hard thing. The people that have adapted quickest and best to the new business as usual, in many instances, are people that have been with us less than 7-8 months. Some of the people that have struggled most are people that have been really successful for a number of years doing something. And all of a sudden, that recipe doesn't work anymore. And then trying to get them to shift away and shake that habit off is actually presented far more of a challenge than bringing on someone that's perhaps only got a few months experience and saying, I know we did this, we're tweaking it a bit, and now we're doing this. But because it's not embedded as much, they tend to be far more open to change and trying new things. So yeah, in answer to that, I think it's a fantastic time to get into it if you can find a company that's in a position to virtually onboard you.
Oh, what about yourself, Kate? What's your thoughts on mindset and getting into sales right now during these tough times?
I agree with Josh. I think getting in now, but my opinion on it is what we're seeing in terms of the behaviours that are needed now have just always been needed. It's just that they've come to the surface. Being natural in the way that you talk to people, being naturally curious, being, you know, for want of a better phrase, giving a shit about the people you're talking to, wanting to solve their problems. That's sales 101 to me. And all this has done is raised it up to say, you need to lead with that, not lead with, here's what I want to sell you. And I think getting into that now and getting those behaviours ingrained now is going to stand you in amazing stead for the future of your career. So absolutely getting in now, I would advocate. And in terms of the mindset, I think one of the things that's helped us and helped the people that I speak to and helped our clients is focusing on much shorter term goals. You know, not focusing on, I want to be this in 12 months time, but what is it that you want to achieve in a week, in the next 4 weeks? What is it that you can make those micro gains, those micro improvements to your skill set, your behaviors, your habits, your process? And, you know, and it's just like an elite sports person. How do you tweak? How do you control the things you can control to gain those marginal gains across a shorter period of time? And that, for me, really helps with that motivational mindset.
Absolutely. And I think what we've got there, I suppose, in summary of that is absolutely we can still sell. It's a good time to get into sales, because if you're successful now, just think of how successful you'll be when, I'm not going to say sales becomes easier, but obviously the situation around us is not as tough. So keeping positive, adapting your approach, which we'll move on to now, and following the basics. We train people all the time on getting to know people. People buy from people because they like them. People buy from people because we give a solution to their problem. That has not changed. The only thing has changed that we've got to build more rapport and get a little bit deeper than we ever have done before. So I think the basic fundamentals of selling are still the same. What's your thoughts, though, on kind of the current crisis in the way of maybe our approach to selling? How's that changed? And again, what's been your advice for your teams and for the audience of what they can do if they're still selling? What should their approach be out there right now? Should they be cold calling? Should they be looking at other channels? What's the best way to sell right now, Josh?
I think we're still doing everything. I think there's been more of a push on social selling, and like for us as a firm, we always also use LinkedIn and used emails and things like that, but it was always secondary to cold calling. The reality is now that it's, if you find a website and call a landline, the chances of someone picking up, and being a decision maker is very, very slim. So I think we've naturally had to adapt and, have a multi-pronged approach when trying to get hold of someone. Asking for, even little things like the mobile numbers, and sort of pushing those. And when you're adding a prospect to your pipe, immediately adding them to LinkedIn, sending them a message as well. So opening a conversation based on the challenges their business are facing with COVID, being sympathetic and describing some of our challenges as a firm as well, and being transparent that it's not easy. And perhaps, sharing some of the pain that we've been through, and building a rapport that way, I think it's worked quite well. I think the ascent of video meetings as well is also a key thing here. Clearly, face-to-face meetings aren't going to be happening whatsoever. And for us, we're in financial services, which tends to still be, a handshake is valued probably more than most sectors, I imagine. So we've had to really adapt, and our client base has as well. And there's a huge upskilling piece, because selling over video is clearly different face-to-face. If you try and do the same thing, just a bit shorter, and through a screen, it's obviously not going to work. You have to use props and screen share properly and build value in a different way. So there was a huge upskilling piece there. And I think also in terms of this, in terms of the sectors you're approaching, for us in the beginning, for instance, things like engineering, that doesn't transition to working from home very well, because they need heavy machinery. So it wasn't intelligent to approach those at that time. What is easy to transition to home is things like architecture or software or things like that, where you can sit at home on a laptop and still do your job. So focusing on sectors and adapting that way, that are more likely to be able to, to still be operational, I suppose. The only other point as well, which I think is quite interesting, is targeting parts of the country you ordinarily wouldn't. Now that video is here, and I believe here today, there are parts, for instance, like Wales. There's lots of people that don't really sell into Wales because of the logistical challenge of getting there. Certainly for us now, what a brilliant time to perhaps approach people in East Anglia or Wales, depending on your service, that you wouldn't ordinarily be able to go and see. Whereas now, because of that geographical barriers being removed, you can sort of open up your pipeline and make it much, much bigger and much, much broader that way as well. So
I think that's a great point. There might be less people in your area right now that are buying, but if you widen the location across the UK, because we are using video, because video has to be used, you can't do face-to-face, then absolutely, you're giving yourself more opportunities to sell. So really good bit of advice. If you've got a product or service, or your recruitment company, why not expanding the areas you're working in? What about yourself, Kate? What other things can we be doing to adapt our approach, and what advice have you got for the audience?
I think going back to something I said earlier is kind of giving more back earlier on in the engagement. So looking at ways that you can actually help their organisation if they're not ready to engage with you. I think that's going to stand organisations in good stead for as the curve comes out of this crisis. So for us, it was, like Josh said, multi-blended approach. Giving on LinkedIn, contacting people on LinkedIn, the fact that you guys are doing things like this, giving back into the community, it's all helping both your brand, personal, and your business brand. We've pivoted, as I said earlier, on sending emails out, just saying, look, these are the things that are helping our other clients. Perhaps they'll help you. We want to share, and perhaps not expecting that immediate thing back. So those are some of the things that I think have helped us. I think video is great. I've used video for years because I've done international selling. But what's really nice is everybody's switching it on now. So you used to get on so many Zoom conference calls and nobody would have their video on. But there's something about being able to peer into somebody's home and see their kids coming into shot. My cat sat on my keyboard. in a conference call the other day with a client, just sat right there. And it's those sorts of things, bringing humour into it, brightening people's days, that has just, I think, changed things a little bit and allow people to let their guard down and loosen up. And don't forget, with everybody being at home, a lot of people have more time in their hands. Senior people are in less meetings. They're in less distractions and interruptions other than the little children and pets. But that's meant that you can engage with those people more. They're more open to having those calls. So those are some of the changes we've perhaps made.
Yeah. Again, just to, I think, to add to that, and I will give a big shout out to Nick Gandy, who is our principal consultant at Prime. He held a training session for us all this week, and it was all around business development. And one of the points that I took away from that session was that generally you're going to be selling into salespeople, hell of a lot. And salespeople like the fact that you would approach and still cold call, because that's what they will be telling their people to do. So don't be apologetic for cold calling people right now. There's still people out there that want your product, that want your service. And unless you're told any differently, you don't know their circumstances, you know. So I think you have to have that same approach to sales. But I think what's evident from what you're saying, you've also got to be able to adapt and make sure you work in all the different channels, widen your area, as Josh said. And the big point from yourself, Kate, and I couldn't agree more, is add further value. Right now, what value are you adding? And I think you should have that mindset as, if it doesn't turn into a sale, but I add value to that company, that future relationship, when that company's in a better position, may produce numerous sales. So the relationship is absolutely key. In terms of other changes then, what other things or what advice on top of that or changes have you made that you've seen that give your sales functions a positive impact? So what can people be doing right now on top of what you said to really make a positive impact if they are still selling right now, Josh?
Well, I think, from a management point of view, I think the most positive thing we do is still having that regular contact. And I think when we started this, my biggest fear was people would feel forgotten. I think we're so used to being in, we've got quite a lively office and, lots of chat flying around, people feeling included. My management would always be, I would change desks every day and sit near people, make sure that, people felt part of the Leyton gang, if you like. And I myself, going through lockdown alone, I know it can be quite simple or quite easy to get into a darker headspace quite quickly. So us, it was making sure that people always had the time of the managers. As a management team, we catch up every day. I will drop in on people that are doing particularly well, and often just give them feedback saying, look, really appreciate the work you're doing. I know it's not easy. And making sure people know that we're noticing and that they are grafting and are really sticking at it in a tough time. From an individual point of view, I think it's a case of, it's very similar behaviours that you'd see in the office. To be honest, if you're struggling to adapt, and we, like any sales team, we've got some people that have taken to this really well and some that perhaps haven't as much. Being proactive with yourself, asking, if there's a guy in your team that's absolutely crushing it and you're not, finding out what he's doing or what she's doing. I think the simple things like that, rather than perhaps the temptation to perhaps get into a darker place or, just get negative. Be proactive and find out what other people are doing in the market that's working so well. I think doing further reading, I know particularly people on furlough, reading, understanding the challenger sale, for instance, something like that in more detail. So you understand the theory of what you're doing. I would also say is a fairly proactive thing to do. I think it's just that mindset of being proactive and trying to improve yourself and learn from your colleagues really differentiates. I could think it's an opportunity to differentiate yourself versus some others.
You've had a question as well, Josh, I suppose that feed quite nicely onto that from Poppy, asking if you're at the early stages of your career right now, and obviously you're going through this, how can you avoid complacency if you're at that SDR level? Yes, I think, I think it's, one of the things we actually talk about quite often is that success is borrowed. You never own it. So when you are successful, and actually we just had a cracking week ourselves, and one of the messages we talked about was, when you are doing well, you take a step, take a moment to recognise that. I think it's important to celebrate success, really important. But it's important that you look back and go, what have I done to get here? What are the steps that are making me perform well to a high level at the moment? Because quite often we see with salespeople, you get this up and down where they kind of put the graft in, do all the prospecting, reach out, smash LinkedIn. They get this wonderful pipeline and then cash it in. And then all of a sudden they've got nothing left and they go through that, Jesus, I've got to graft again and do that. And you end up this up and down. I think that the best people understand the behaviours that lead to success and do them every day.
I think that's it. It's not this kind of, ad hoc, as and when I need it kind of approach. If I do these things every day, it's like a recipe to me. If I do these behaviors, I will be successful. It's just setting yourself and those targets and sticking to them, I think. Understanding what good looks like and doing it every day.
Yeah. And another question, Kate, I'll come to you. It's on the same subject, but what have you done to adapt your leadership style if you're managing people that are working remotely in sales right now?
I'm not sure I personally have adapted, only because I've managed remote people a lot. I think a couple of things is making sure that you're managing and coaching the whole person, and that's never been more important, that you're not just looking at their numbers and looking at what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. It's understanding what's impacting that outcome, and actually checking in and making sure that you're coaching to that whole person. I think that's something that everybody needs to do. It's understanding what's motivating them and giving them ownership and accountability for that. So if you can tap into, and have them own, what do I want to achieve? When do I want to achieve it by? That transfers that accountability and means that you have to inspect less, that you're actually just on the journey with them and supporting them in a coaching manner. Those are some of the things. And to Josh's point, it's never been more important to have team connections. So if you're pairing people up, somebody that's strong at one particular thing, that somebody else can help them, pair them up, have them practice, have them support one another, have them drive check-ins. Those are some of the things that you can encourage everybody to become a coaching and support network, not just the manager and rep kind of relationship. So those are kind of some of the things. And again, I'll go back to that micro goals piece and being able to adjust and adapt very quickly. We've always done a morning scrum. We call it scrum. It's in the office, it's a stand-up meeting. It's 5 to 15 minutes long. Everybody says, what did I do yesterday? What did I achieve? What am I going to do today? These are the things I'm setting out for myself. Really short and punchy. If anybody's got an idea, they say, yeah, I can help you with that. And we've just transitioned. The only sort of change we made is transition to also have one of those at the end of the day, so that we can very quickly assess and say, that really worked for me today. I'm going to redo that tomorrow. If anybody else wants to try it, try this. Or I'm flogging a dead horse here. Let's move on and do something different. So being able to make those very quick micro decisions and drive that motivation as well.
I think they're really valid points, and I think I'll speak for maybe some of the businesses out there or people listening that might be on furlough, for example. We have furloughed some of our team for the obvious reasons in terms of a downturn in business. But what was really important to us, and myself and Nicole, I suppose, leading from the top, was that there was regular communication across the board. So we're working on their development. We're having, Zoom socials on a Friday. We're having what personal development we can give them with on a Monday, and we're having a training session every Wednesday. And I think what that has done is made people still feel part of the team, still give them goals to be able to work on. And one thing that I've, again, personally trying to learn from this is working from home for me, although I've done it previously, it's a completely different circumstance than I've ever been in before. But by writing down the 3 things I want to achieve in the day gives me that objective by the end of the day to feel if I've had a productive day or not because I haven't got the leaderboard of salespeople in front of me to tell me who's at the top. And I think having those goals is really, really important. Kind of moving on then now to, I suppose, kind of how sales may look in the future. We obviously talked a lot about kind of what we can be doing now to keep selling. I think it's really positive that the message is coming out that you can still sell. Keep positive, keep doing what you're doing, just adapt your approach and build better relationships, because that's the key. But there's things like working from home, which have become normal now. And this has been a really big debate that's been going on for a while. So it's not a new thing, because a lot of businesses were getting people to work from home long before now. The difference is now, is that going to become the norm? Kate, you can kick us off with this one. What's your thoughts on kind of working from home? And I'm going to say in particularly in a sales-based position, because there is an argument to this that working from home in sales doesn't work as effectively of being in an office with a sales team, sales leaderboards, and everything else. What's your thoughts on working from home in sales?
I think that people can be very successful working from home when it's their choice. I think the big thing about right now is it's enforced, and that feels very controlling, and it feels like I want to break out and I want to get back to my office and all the banter and the fun and the support network that brings. I think when we come out of this, there'll be a blend. I think I personally don't like working from home all the time, but I do like some days where I've got a task, a thing that I've got to get done, and I just need to get down to it without distraction. It works very well for me. I've always been very comfortable with my team working from home. Again, it comes back to that accountability piece. You know, the best salespeople run their own business, no matter whether you're a beginner SDR or whether you're a 30-year enterprise salesperson. If you think about it as running your own business, then you're accountable for your own outcomes, and therefore where you work doesn't actually make a difference. But the camaraderie, the shared learning, the snippets that you get to overhear in an office are really, really valuable. And I don't want to lose that. And I don't think a lot of organizations will want to lose that. But I think the rigid control over people working in the office might loosen a lot when it comes to it. We might start seeing smaller offices that are more drop-in zones that for people that want to flip working from home to working in an office. There might be more things like, look, we want everybody to be in on a Friday to have a bit of a laugh and a banter, but we're going to relax things if you need to work from home because you've got, you know, a delivery or whatever that might be. So the two things for me are, you know, that accountability is absolutely key, and it, you know, separates the superstars from you know, the rest, as it were. And for me, that will continue in a blended approach.
Okay. Do you think more businesses then will have allow salespeople to work from home that didn't before?
I think they should. And again, it does depend on your role, and it does depend on where you are in your career. But I think that if people have seen, if organizations have seen the fact that they've built a culture of trust and accountability, and they're focusing on those outcomes rather than, you know, perhaps just basic activity, then all of that can be measured from afar. We've got the technology in place now. We can have that connectivity, those connections, and it will be more the herding mentality of wanting support around us that will bring us into the office and those team gatherings for me.
Okay, so you're definitely pro working from home.
I'm pro a blend. I'm pro a blend. I think a bit of both is healthy for everybody.
Excellent. What about yourself, Josh? Is working from home going to become the norm in sales?
Well, I'm personally bloody sick of it. So for me,
me
I'm doing 12 hours in the office each day. I think anything to avoid home. I think, I think similar to Kate. I think I'm more pro office. I think actually that the big learn from me from this is actually really showing a light on the value of having a really positive and productive office environment. Because we've had to work so hard to replicate the simple things we took for granted around coaching. I think Kate made the snippets, learning from your colleagues around you, that having a good day. What's he saying? What's she saying? That's all gone. And to try and replicate that is far more process driven, far heavier, and harder to do when you're working from home. I think for me, historically, for context, we've had no working from home at all for sales roles. If someone had a meeting at 11, they wouldn't come in, then go out, with common sense there. But for phone-based roles, historically, it's always been 100% office space. I think the only thing that would change for me is, exactly, if someone had a parcel to collect, or the Sky guy was coming around that day, rather than take a day annual leave, we'd let people work from home for that. But for me, I think there's certainly more understanding and process we've garnered, and we know people can be productive at home now. So in those instances, yes. But for me, if anything, it's made me really sort of celebrate the success in the office environment we have, and actually, if anything, I'd want to work harder on that so people enjoy that more when we do go back to the my stance.
There's an interesting article that I've been reading this week, and it gives some stats in it. And being someone in sales, I love a good stat. And it was that 65% of businesses are not seeing a downturn in productivity. So that would suggest that we're probably going to see a lot more businesses adopt the working from home as the norm. I think to add my input on it, I think there is a blend, but I do miss the office environment. And I think if you're in a one location opportunity, so if you're in a role that's going to take you around the country, then naturally that's going to be a lot of alone time. And when we speak to a lot of young salespeople coming into the industry, face-to-face selling tends to be something that's really attractive. For me, I enjoyed face-to-face, but I actually preferred being on a phone because I can sell quicker and I can sell more often than driving around the country and spending time on my own on the M6 motorway or whatever. So I'm quite a fan of the office environment, selling on the phone and making sales, quick sales and so on. But at the same time, I think that you may be left behind in terms of attracting the best talent if you're not going to be able to have that approach where other companies are probably going to evolve with the times. Do you think that's something that businesses are going to have to implement for bringing young people in, if that's going to become more the norm, or you're going to be missing out on talent that want to be treated more as an adult as a young salesperson, for example? What's your thoughts on that, Josh?
I think, to me, I can see why people would want it, and I think a lot of, and myself included, this working from home idea, particularly as at Leyton, we weren't really very flexible on it before. It was really romanticized, this idea, you work in your pajamas, be awesome. It's not, it's awful. Like, it's less, for me, it's in terms of your personality type, but I really miss the communication piece. And actually earlier in my career, I want to be in close proximity to successful people that know what they're doing so I can mimic some of those behaviors. If I'm sitting in my lounge, how on earth do I learn and develop at the same rate as the person that is perhaps in the same role, sitting next to a top performer every day and learning off that person? Yeah, to me, I think it's probably a bit over romanticized at the sort of the junior end of the job market. I think for me, at the more experienced level, I think it is a must. I think, particularly once people have children and those kind of responsibilities, not having any flexibility is completely unreasonable at this point. So I think you need to understand the role and the people you're dealing with. But for me, if an entry grad said, "Well, I'm not starting for you initially, we work from home 2 days a week," I'd be like, "Fine, don't start." I need you next to top performers learning, and I want you to develop in 6 months. If I can get you to a year's experience through learning off experts, that's better for you and me. If I hire 2 people, one works at home every day, one works in the office, one works from home twice a week, one works in the office 5 days a week. After a year, that person who's been in the office every day is going to be a better salesperson. So for me, I don't think it's going to be a must-have at the entry level, but certainly later on in the job market, yeah.
Brilliant. And thank you for Jack Winter for that question that was around, do we need to adapt to the working from home? Moving on to face-to-face selling. What's your thoughts, Kay, on face-to-face selling being replaced by the things like online platforms such as this, Zoom, Teams? Will we see face-to-face selling continue, or will we see it all done online? What's your thoughts on that, Kate?
I think for certain organisations that started to change well before the COVID crisis came along. For the last probably 4 or 5 years of my career, most of what I did was video-based selling, not travelling. It just became half of the course of what our day-to-day sales activities were. So I think a lot of organisations were ahead of the curve on that. Particularly new startup SaaS organizations where the cost of sale, and to your point, Neil, I can get so much more done, so many more meetings done in a day than if I'm spending it on the M6 in a traffic jam. I can also qualify much quicker and much earlier, so I'm not rocking up to a meeting and having somebody not turn up or it not being a great meeting. I can tell that very quickly in a video call, and I haven't had to, move from the comfort of my comfy office chair. So I think that started well before. However, I still love being able to read a room and build a relationship face to face. So with organizations, larger organizations perhaps, or opportunities, or ones where you can, and there is the opportunity to travel to their offices, it is nice to do that. But I don't think it's been needed for a wee while, certainly for the markets and the people we sell into. Perhaps for the more traditional markets, that is more prevalent.
What about yourself, Josh? Are we going to see the end of face-to-face meetings, or will we be back to that quicker than you know it?
I think we're going to see, I think, like as Kate said earlier, a blended approach. I think for us, and we're doing our business plan for next year at the moment. We're certainly factoring in video meetings for the whole year, not just the inevitable sort of pre-Christmas time. I think for me, there's so many advantages. I think particularly for us, we have offices in America and Canada where they can't get their head around the idea that you would travel to meet. Obviously, it's a much bigger geography, but the idea of going to see someone, like, are you mental? Why would you get a car when you could just do this? So it's long been an envy of mine that they can do, as a BDR, you can do 3 or 4 meetings in a day, whereas for us, you've got maximum 2 because of car times and traffic. Yeah. So I think it's definitely here to stay. I think for us, we're still going to work out what good looks like. I think there's certain, as I mentioned earlier, certain geographical places where it makes sense that we can now access with this that perhaps we wouldn't necessarily travel to before. I'm thinking the southwest, Wales, some parts of East Anglia, north of Scotland, all those kind of places that are now going to be imminently accessible. I still think there's a huge value, and there will be for face-to-face meetings. I think probably from our point of view, I envisage it being at the higher end of the market where the deal value is higher. I think if you're doing a piece of business at £10,000, that's one thing. I think if you're doing a piece of business at £250,000, you might kind of want to, shake someone's hand and, read them a bit. Yeah. So for us, it would be kind of, taking into account geography, taking into account deal value, and making decisions based on that would be how I envisage we go about it.
Do you think you can still build the same rapport, and obviously body language being a key thing when we're selling? Can you build the same rapport as you can on the likes of Zoom than you can do face-to-face?
Not quite. I think for me, and actually this is reflected in close rates as well, and it's certainly true at Leyton. I'm assuming it'll be similar elsewhere. If we look at our conversion rates of phone, you have X at phone, you then have X times plus 50% of video, and then Y plus 50% for face-to-face. And for me, that is symptomatic of the ability to build value, build rapport, and actually understand that person that you're meeting. I think when you're on these things, I certainly, there's an element of being on show when you're on a Zoom. You're conscious about how you're coming across a bit more. And it isn't always as natural, particularly for people that haven't been doing this for a number of years. I think, if you're someone like Kate that's been doing it for years, you're probably very comfortable. But for a lot of our clients, they've never done one of these until 6 weeks ago. Yeah. So they still, perhaps a bit on edge, not quite as trusting of it. So no, I don't think you can build the same relationship. Okay.
And I suppose moving on, only a couple of questions that we've got left. What do you think the future of sales holds, Kate? What's it going to look like after we come through all this? What's it going to look like?
Maybe an unpopular position here, but I don't think it's going to look any different. I think that sales is sales. I think that when all's said and done, people will go back to the way that they always were. I think the positives that will come out of it is those that have doubled down on their own development, those organizations that have kept going through all of this will come out of it stronger. I think we'll see them sort of micro changes like more use of video and things like that. But sales, I don't think we're going to see this big change. I think selling is selling, and there's only those positive adjustments of people being a bit more real, people being a bit more relaxed about themselves, that perhaps this COVID, everybody being in the same situation is given. It might be unpopular, but I don't think it's going to change that much. I think it can only be positive, in my opinion, as to what the outcomes are.
Sure, everybody listening in, no matter what experience, would want to hear that positivity, because I completely agree. I think that people will be left behind if they don't work now to build better relationships.
100%.
So if there was one tip that I was giving to everybody irrelevant of your experience right now, it would be, when was the last time you spoke to your client that didn't buy your product or service in the last year? Because if they're ready to buy again, your relationship needs to be as strong with them as it is to people that are buying on a frequent basis. So build strong relationships, because for me, that will be, when we get back in it, the market will be more competitive. Those relationships are going to be the difference for me. Anything to add to that, Josh, in terms of what it's going to look like? What does the future hold for sales?
I think no profound changes. I think the introduction and maintenance of technology like this is obviously here to stay, I think. And I think for certainly for people at the junior end of the sales sort of job ladder, I was looking for a job in 2011, which was obviously just coming off the back or mid of the last recession. And the most common role was a sales role. Sales will never be more important than in the last sort of 10 years than it will be in say 6 months time, because companies are going to be struggling in many situations, and getting clients on board, getting revenue in, getting cash in the bank is the number one challenge for almost every business in the UK at this point. And you achieve that through sales and through good salespeople. So if anything, I think the value of salespeople will increase. The value of top and good, well-trained, diligent salespeople is going to be sky high. I think it's just making sure that you are one of those people who takes the advantage of that. And there's always going to be a market there. It's just, do you get it or does someone else? And making sure that you're that company, you're that individual that gets the market. So yeah, I think it's a positive situation.
Excellent. So final question I've got for you is, there's a lot of salespeople that are on furlough at the moment or are not able to sell. What can they be doing right now? What advice can you give to them to hit the ground running when we get back? Kate, come to you first of all.
Be a sponge. Be a sponge. There are so many people that you can learn from right now. I've not seen any other community more than the sales community rally together during this time. The relationships I've built, not for my business, but just generally that through LinkedIn, through social media, through doing things like this, that have brought you closer together. If you can learn from those people, if you can learn from everything that's being put out there, that is the best thing that you can do. And as Josh says, you're going to come out of this stronger and better equipped, better salespeople. So my number one piece of advice is set yourself goals, be a sponge, move yourself forward during that time. Even if you're not doing the work, doesn't mean you can't work on yourself. So that for me is just the number one.
Brilliant. Josh, advice for people to hit the ground running when they get back at it?
Yeah, I think slightly different for me. I think the number one thing is keeping yourself healthy, keeping your mental health in a good place. I think going back to work is, for people that are on furlough, it's very easy to form negative habits where you can't do much and to get into a bit of a rut. I think for me, what good would look like would be people coming back in better physical shape than when they left, looking after their mental health the best they can, and being in a positive mindset. I think if you couple that with Kate's points around self-improvement, you're onto a winner. But I think that would be the number one thing for me is coming back in better physical and mental condition than when you left. The mental condition bit, probably not realistic in many instances, to be honest. But if you take care of the physical bit and look after yourself as a person, I think you'll be a much more valuable salesperson as well.
Perfect. Couple of questions then that have come in. Question for Stephen. I suppose he's asking, what can you do to keep your relationship strong if you are on furlough? Obviously, you're going to need to seek legal advice on this, but my advice, I suppose, is more along the lines of you're not able to sell or do anything that generates revenue, but in terms of a relationship, sharing articles that might be of interest, adding value through things like these webinars and things that you can be doing that aren't generating revenue, I believe are probably fine. So there are things you can do to keep your relationship strong, and it should be just around adding value, not thinking about selling. What can you do to add value to that person that you might not have done before? So articles, LinkedIn posts, whatever, share that way. In terms of another question that has come in, and we'll answer a couple of these and then we will finish. Should businesses fear for the future regarding supply and demand? That's from Pierce. I think, Josh, you're going to say no, but what's your thoughts on that, Josh?
I think huge fluctuations depending on what sector you're in. In most instances, the reality is that lots of people markets will experience decreased demand as businesses struggle and worry about cash a bit more, but they will still spend money and they will still buy services. It's just that you'll have to fight harder and be better to get them. So the best salespeople will still succeed, I think. But it's how you adapt and making sure that when that money is spent, it goes to you and your organization and into your, towards your targets, not a competitor, being more proactive, things like that.
And final question for yourself, Kate. Again, I think it's down to relationships, which has been a key thing that's come out of this webinar. What can you do if you are still working to not over smother your clients during this period? So what would be your advice in terms of how often maybe you should be contacting your clients at this moment in time?
I'm thinking out loud on that. I would be asking my clients. I would be saying, what is it that you need? What is it that you need from me? What rhythm should we create through this to make sure that you're as supported as you possibly can be? And I don't want to smother you, so let's have a conversation about it. That's, you know, every client is going to be different. Some will be super needy depending on their journey with you. Some will be like, look, we're good, leave me alone, stop contacting me, I'm focused on other areas. But have that conversation, just have the confidence to ask that question and say, what works for you?
And I think that's probably evident from what this has come about is we've talked about, should you do face-to-face selling or will it all be online? Ask your customers what they would prefer, because I think you'll find a remarkable amount would say, yeah, let's do it by Zoom. Saves you time, saves you money, and means you could probably do a lot more of the meetings. So really good advice. Ask your clients what they prefer in terms of how often and how they would prefer you to contact them. And that's going to build a better relationship because of it. Time has flown by, so we are 50 minutes in, and so I was trying to keep it to time, so obviously we are going to kind of come to conclude at that point. Apologies for quite a few people that have asked questions we've not had time to answer, but I think a lot of the questions that have been asked we've kind of covered during, so hopefully you've had some answers to it. In terms of what will happen next from here, we will send out a video of this. So if you want to be able to see some of the key takeaways, then you'll be able to see that in video. And also we'll be running another webinar next Thursday, same time, 11 a.m. And this webinar, I think, leads quite nicely on from what we've just been discussing. And it's a training focused webinar, how to develop and maintain a winning mindset, which I think is being challenged even more so right now than ever before. Hosted by myself and the awesome Nicole Plinston. So you'll be able to get that link in the follow-up email and check out the Prime LinkedIn later for the details on that webinar next week. Finally, thank you, Kate. Thank you, Josh. It's been brilliant to have you both with us. There's been so much valuable insight across the last 45 minutes to 50 minutes. So thank you so much. I think the big takeaway from me is sales will continue. We just need to adapt the way that we approach it. We need to keep a positive mindset, and now's the time to build better relationships than you've ever had before. So it's great to see the positivity, and I hope everybody else has got that from this webinar today. So thank you for taking the time out. Thank you to everybody that's listened in. Keep safe, keep well, and keep changing the perception of sales. Thank you, everyone. See you soon.
Thanks, guys. Take care.